Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Bearded Things. I'm one of your bearded hosts. My name is Chris, and I'm here with my buddy Tyler. Tyler, how are you?
I am good. I am exhausted, but I'm good.
That's better than being bored, I guess, right? Like you had an eventful weekend.
Weekend, yeah. I went up to Reno to see my son, which was awesome, but it's like between 18 and 20 hours round trip, 8 to 10 hours there, 8 to 10 hours back. And today left around 10:30-ish and got back here to my house around 7:30. So I'm tired. I banged out a script because I love you listeners and want to make sure you have quality product to listen to. So yeah, hopefully it's good. Hopefully I'm not delirious and speaking out of my ass, but if I am, you guys let us know.
Yeah, and I think it might be a little bit more entertaining, and it's honest, right? It's like this is what separates artistes.
Exactly.
You just push
artisan podcasters.
And I want to give a super quick shout out before we get too deep into anything to our dedicated, loyal listener and bearded friend, Gabby, who was talking some crap. I'm just gonna put that out there.
Yeah, what the fuck, Gabby? So what's for your Rams home? They got their shit destroyed this week.
Now, a little backstory here. Gabby is a pretty dedicated, diehard Rams fan for no reason. I can't figure it out. Maybe it's, hitting the sauce a little bit. I don't know. Not going to judge, but she chose the Rams, or the Rams chose her. You're a Niners fan. And on Sunday, the day we're actually recording this, they went head to head and it did not work out for the Rams.
Yeah, the Rams had a case of the dropsies. It looked like they couldn't catch anything.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that they couldn't catch anything or they didn't know how to. It was really hard to tell.
Yeah, it was interesting. I caught the tail end of the game after I got home because I was driving most of the way, but I kept getting the updates like on my phone showing, it was like 21-0, 21-3, something like that, 49ers at one point. And I think the 49ers put in their JV team and mopped up the rest of the game. That's why the Rams came back and made it interesting. It was a late touchdown, so the score looks closer than it actually was, but the game wasn't that close. The 20-24, I think it was 16 was the final, but the Niners, they kind of ran away from it. I thought Chris Collinsworth was going to jinx it because he's fucking stupid and I hate Chris Collinsworth. But he was like, this is why the 49ers are going to win the game with like 9 minutes left. And I was like, dude, you're going to fuck this up.
I'm not sure who it was, but it was whoever the California, Southern California NBC sports affiliate was. I wasn't watching. I was setting up to record this. He's like, well, it looks like the Rams have a team. And I thought that summed it up pretty well.
Interesting, yeah.
So, we're not just roasting Gabby to be mean. She actually wanted us to give a feedback on the game. And so she brought this on herself.
No, I'm roasting because I want to be mean because the Rams suck. Get the fuck out of here.
Speaking about good, loyal fans, we also recently got some fantastic email responses from one of you dear listeners.
Oh, yeah. Super articulate, super nice, super like just showering us with praise. It was so wonderful. And thank you so much for listening and giving us listener count numbers up. We appreciate it.
Yeah, that download was very much appreciated. And for everybody else, if you're not sure what's going on, we just want to be, completely open with you guys and everything. So we're not going to talk about it on air, but feel free. It's posted on our social media sites just because, well, full disclosure, right? We're all part of this together and everybody's welcome to have a voice. So if you haven't seen anything yet, feel free to go, like I was saying, to our social media. All right. Now that all the business is out of the way.
All the fun stuff's been out. What are we going to talk about today?
Well, in the spirit of Halloween, I wanted to do something a little spooky, a little ghosty. So I'm going with the haunted tales of Abraham Lincoln.
Ooh, nice. I'm going to be covering the inspiration for the Conjuring 2, which is the Enfield Poltergeist.
Oh, that's a fun one.
It is a fun one.
Okay. And should we get on with the show and get right into it?
Let's do it.
Okay. I think you went first last week, so I am up.
You're up. Let's do this. No pressure.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm also doing like one of the most beloved founding fathers. So
yeah, whatever. I mean, what has he done?
There's
according to some people have done more than he has. So
maybe they have, maybe they haven't. I don't know. Who could say? I'm just going to leave it. I'm not going to go down there.
Yeah, we already got. We'll just move on.
All right. Here in America, we hold our founding fathers in an extremely high regard. Unfortunately, most of the time you hear about them, it's really stuffy, extremely formal, and generally like in textbooks. We talk about their policies, their victories, their failures in office. But there's a little bit more to one of the founding fathers, one Abraham Lincoln, that most textbooks cover.
His stovetop hat.
There's that, and he actually was quite the dueler.
Oh,
He would take advantage. Side story. Sorry, everyone. He was extremely tall, so he would regularly challenge people he got in an argument with, which was often because he was a lawyer. He would challenge them to a duel, and he would pick swords, which gave him,
understandable. Yeah,
yeah.
the length reach.
So he kind of cheated his way into being pretty awesome.
Hey, whatever. He was what, like 6'6"? Like, if you got it, flaunt it. Like,
Yeah.
You stab the shit out of people.
So to be fair to our listeners outside of the US, because I know we have a few, we're going to dive into a little bit of American history for you, but I promise I don't like dry history, so this will be fun. Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president of the United States. For those who keep track, we're currently at 45, and at the time of recording, a few weeks away from deciding who the 46th will be. So it was a while ago. Lincoln was famous for being honest about chopping down a cherry tree, which earned him the nickname Honest Abe, and for abolishing slavery in the United States. By doing so, he pissed off a lot of people, one of which was a very famous theater actor named John Wilkes Booth. Booth would go on to assassinate Abraham Lincoln, spoiler, on April 15th, 1865. There's a lot more to his political career that we won't be getting into. Instead, we'll be focusing on the many paranormal events that seem to follow him throughout his entire life and after his death. It's widely reported that Lincoln was first introduced to the paranormal by his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, via the spiritualist movement. Now, during the height of the Civil War, upper-class families would hire these air quotes, giant air quotes, psychics to contact their sons who had died in battle. The psychics were pretty much out-of-work magicians taking advantage of people's pain for profit, kind of like John Edwards or Sylvia Brown or any TV psychic today. This is taken from the official White House Historical Society. Mrs. Lincoln experienced a numbing amount of loss, including her mother at a young age, 3 out of 4 of her children, and her husband before her very eyes. She first turned to spiritualism as a tool for processing her grief after the death of her second youngest son, William, or Willie, in February of 1862. According to a newspaper article published the day after Willie's death, his sickness was an intermittent fever, assuming a typhoid character. It has caused anxiety and alarm to his family and friends for a week past. The president has been by his side much of the time, scarcely taking a rest for 10 days past. Willie was only 11 years old at the time of his passing, so reaching out to someone who claims they can help make the pain go away, it makes a lot of sense. So I'm not going to judge her for going down this road.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense.
Now, in the Library of Congress, which is, it literally can't get any more official than being in the Library of Congress, First Lady Mary Todd Lincoln became inconsolable after the passing of Willie and desperately searched for an outlet for her grief. Shortly after his death, she was introduced to the Lorries, a well-known group of mediums / bullshit artists that were located in Georgetown. That part's not in Library of Congress. I'm just being honest with you. Mrs. Lincoln found such comfort from these seances held by the group that she started hosting her own seances in the Red Room of the White House. There's evidence to suggest that she hosted as many as 8 seances in the White House and that her husband was even in attendance for a few of them. The seances proved to be such an effective coping mechanism for Mrs. Lincoln that she once remarked to her half-sister that, quote, "Willie lives. He comes to me every night and he stands at the foot of my bed with the same sweet, adorable smile that he always had. He does not always come alone. Little Eddie, who was her son that perished at the age of 4, is sometimes with him." Through spiritualism, Mrs. Lincoln, like many Americans at the time, found solace in the belief that one could communicate with lost loved ones. Despite this, Mrs. Lincoln did take a step back from her practice after several months due to societal pressures because people started kind of calling her crazy. During this time, Lincoln began having strange visions. He had a conversation with a good friend named Ward Hill Lamon, who would go on to write that Lincoln told him on an evening in early 1865, I'm not going to do an Abraham Lincoln voice because I'm not Daniel Day-Lewis, but imagine Daniel Day-Lewis is doing this. Okay, I'll try. "About 10 days ago, I retired very late. I soon began to dream." I can't do it. "There seemed to be a death-like stillness about me. Then I heard subdued sobs as if a number of people were weeping. I thought I left my bed and wandered downstairs. I arrived at the East Room. Before me was a catafalque on which rested a corpse wrapped in funeral vestments. Around it were stationed soldiers who were acting as guards, and there was a throng of people, some gazing mournfully upon the corpse whose face covered, others weeping pitifully. Who is dead in the White House? I demanded of the soldiers. The president, was his answer. He was killed by an assassin. It was not the first time, my apologies to any descendants of Abraham Lincoln or historical buffs. I did my best. It was not
bad. It was pretty good.
I tried. It was not the first time Lincoln saw his own death. Soon after his election in 1860, he'd seen a double image of his face reflected in a mirror in his Springfield, Illinois home. One was his real face, the other was a pale imitation. Lincoln's superstitious wife, Mary Todd, did not see the mirror images but was deeply troubled by her husband's account of the incident. She prophesied that the sharper image indicated that he would serve out his first term. The faint ghost-like image was a sign. She said that he would be renominated for a second term, but would not live to complete it.
Ooh.
As I mentioned before, on April 14th, 1865, President Lincoln was shot by Southern sympathizer John Wilkes Booth in the back of the head as he watched a play titled Our American Cousin at Ford's Theater. He died at 7:22 the next morning. Fun fact, a tradition was actually formed that night. In honor of the president, whenever that play is performed to this day, it's traditionally stopped at the moment he was shot out of respect.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. And they actually, I think they still do it at Ford's Theater, which is going to be a little
kind
weird.
of morbid, but kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's supposed to be like a comedy, which is interesting. Like, I just want to know who the American cousin was. Like, is it Cousin Vinny?
I read it once. I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The paranormal stories didn't stop with Lincoln's death. Liz Carpenter, press secretary to Lady Bird Johnson, which is President Johnson's wife, told author John Alexander that Mrs. Johnson believed she'd felt Lincoln's presence one spring evening while watching a television program about his death. Mrs. Johnson admitted feeling a strange coldness and decided sense of unease. This disquieting apprehension has been felt by others. Grace Coolidge, wife of Calvin Coolidge, the 13th president, was the first person to report having actually seen the ghost of Abraham Lincoln. She said he stood at a window of the Oval Office, hands clasped behind his back, gazing out over the Potomac River, perhaps still seeing the bloody battlefields beyond.
Wait, did you say the 13th president?
Yeah, she would go back and do like volunteer work.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait a minute. Like, she saw the future?
She's a time traveler.
Bow, bow, bow.
The ghost of Lincoln was frequently seen during the administration of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when the country went through a devastating depression, then a world war. When Queen Wilhelmina, I'm sorry to the Queen of the Netherlands, she was a guest at the White House during that period. She was awoken one night by a knock on her bedroom door. Thinking it might be an important message, she got up and opened the door. The top-hatted figure of President Lincoln stood in the doorway. The Queen fainted. When she came to, she was laying on the floor. The apparition had vanished. That's got to be really awkward for anybody who was like serving her that evening.
Right.
Eleanor Roosevelt used Lincoln's bedroom as her study. Although she denied seeing the former president's ghost, she admitted to feeling his presence whenever she worked late at night. She thought he was standing behind her, peering over her shoulder.
Creepy.
This is my favorite story, and it's actually pretty legendary. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, he loved to retire late, taking long hot baths while drinking a scotch and smoked cigars to relax. He told this following story several times. You can find it almost anywhere in all of the Winston Churchill quotes. So one night he climbed out of the bath and stood there naked, except for his cigar. He walked into the adjoining bedroom. He was startled to see Lincoln standing by the fireplace in the room, leaning on the mantel. Churchill simply took a cigar out of his mouth, tapped the ash off the end of the cigar, and said, "Good evening, Mr. President. You seem to have me at a disadvantage." Lincoln smiled softly and as if laughing, and then disappeared. And I have one more one that's actually kind of sweet. President Lyndon Johnson supposedly encountered Lincoln's apparition during a moment of national stress. President Johnson reportedly spoke to Lincoln, asking him how he handled an unpopular war. Lincoln was president during the American Civil War, which was extremely unpopular, as you can imagine. And during the time, Johnson was dealing with massive backlash over the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
Lincoln reportedly replied, "Don't go to the theater." Then there's the train. Following Abraham Lincoln's 1865 assassination, two coffins, one containing the president's body and the other the exhumed remains of his young son Willie, were placed on a train pulled by a steam locomotive called the Nashville for transport back to Lincoln's home state of Illinois, where they would be laid to rest for eternity. All along the route from Washington to Illinois, people lined the tracks to pay their respects to the president. The funeral train was made up of 9 cars. The ninth car, which had been built to take the living president and his family on rail trips, was the one in which Lincoln and Willie were carried. The train's route passed through Albany, New York, and for a number of years afterward, around the anniversary of Lincoln's final journey, Albany area railroad men reported seeing a phantom version of the funeral train traveling on the rails.
Mm.
And actually, hundreds have reported seeing the ghost train traveling through the countryside with the president's casket aboard. It's been rumored that clocks and watches stop running when the train passes through town. The air on the tracks becomes cool and sharp. Clouds cover the moon, and a ghostly headlight pierces the night. Suddenly, with a rush of wind, the train passes by noiselessly. Communities throughout the 7 states still hold watches for the phantom funeral train. The best known are in Albany, New York on the nights of April 26th and April 27th, and in Urbana, Ohio on the night of April 29th. So that is the very tragic and very haunted life of Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, that's crazy. I know when I played football, our football coach had a little printout of like overcoming perseverance, and it was about like Abraham Lincoln, how like, you know, he asked Mary Todd to marry him like 4 times. She kept saying no, and then like I think he was engaged before that, and like she died, and then he ran for like Senate and like legislation, all these different places. He kept getting, kept failed, he failed, and like eventually, became the president and all that stuff. And like he had such, like you said, a lot of tragedy in his life, but also so much success. And it's like he, persevered and did all this stuff, and then, was shot. But it's pretty crazy because, like I've said before on the podcast, I'm a huge like history nerd and history buff, and the stories they tell, like the firsthand accounts of like when, like the story with like Johnson, when LBJ was talking to him, and like Lincoln supposedly replies like, "Don't go to the theater." Like he was like, Lincoln was really funny. Like
He was a funny guy, by all accounts. All the biographies say that.
The remaining like transcripts and stuff like that. Like he was a funny dude, and so it's like that. It seems like that's something he would. Obviously, we don't know, but it just seems like something he would say, and that's really cool. Like it's awesome. Like
yeah, it fits the character, and then the same with Winston Churchill. Like
oh yeah, yeah,
which is hilarious.
Yeah, Churchill is he's an interesting character. But yeah, that was awesome, man. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a lot of fun to read it. And I think it's one of those. What I was having a really hard time putting a ghost story together because I was realizing that ghost stories always make me sad and I could never figure out why. And it's a lot of them. There's a lot of tragedy involved in the legend or the lore. And I mean, there's even tales of one of Lincoln's kids haunting the secret tunnels under the White House. So
yeah. Now it's time to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we are going to get into Banter with the Beardsleys.
Woo!
And welcome back. I hope you guys are all doing well and you enjoyed the commercial break. We are now going to transition into Banter with the Beardsleys.
All right. So what is Banter with the Beardsleys?
So Banter with the Beardsleys is our fun, off-the-cuff, unscripted banter between you and I. We are the Beardsleys. And we take a listener submitted question or statement or something you submit to us, and we read it on the show. We don't really know what it is beforehand. We pull it out of a hat and we talk about it on the air, and we kind of just give our input. It can be like a spooky question. It can be, like, what are beard tips? What are your favorite sports? Something, if you want to get to know us a little bit more, you want to just have an interesting conversation, something you've always wanted to talk about or something you're interested in. Send it to us and we will read on the air and we'll be able to have some banter with it.
Yeah. And tonight we have one from one of you guys, but they didn't fill out the email thing all the way. So I'm not sure who it's from, but that's okay. We'll read it anyways because it's an interesting one. So Anonymous asks, was there ever an event in your life that defied explanation?
Ooh, an event in my life that defied explanation? Good one. Good job, anonymous listener who doesn't know how to fill out an email. That sounded harsh.
It was a little mean.
Sorry, I did not. I am tired. I am very sleepy.
Look,
I apologize.
Anonymous listener, Pa doesn't mean that. He's just really tired right now.
Pa just needs to rest his eyes for a moment. Something that defies explanation.
I mean, I think I have
Yeah, I was like,
something.
can I pass and let you go when I think about it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So this happened to me forever ago, but I don't. I'll never forget it. It was a very weird, unexplainable moment. So I was in elementary school, and at my elementary school, they divided up the yard. So the younger kids were on one side, the older kids weren't allowed to cross this invisible line, and they played on the other side. So I had to been in the like first or second grade, and they had this. I'm old. I'm very, very old. So the playground equipment was like old rusted steel from
I was like, was
like
it made out of syringes?
that was the sand. The sand was syringes and
Oh, okay.
broken
Yeah, nice.
glass.
Perfect.
But yeah, it had so this we had this giant like iron rocket thing just made of bars, like a skeleton of a rocket. And you could climb up it. It was probably I don't even think I'm kidding. I think it was about 20 feet tall. So I was hanging inside of this metal rocket of death. And I remember hanging there thinking, I'm gonna fall. And this is a bad drop. Like it's not gonna work out. And I was like running through my head, like, well, I think I broke my arm once. I'm about to break my leg, I think. And I'm letting go, and my hands are clear of it. And I drop about an inch or two, and I reach back up and I grabbed the bar that I was hanging from. And I don't know how I did that.
You're a
I had to have been a ninja.
ninja.
So I don't know if it's, spirit guides, guardian angel, whatever you want to call it, ancestors protecting me for whatever you believe. I don't know what happened, but I remember feeling myself fall a good 2 inches and then all of a sudden being back on the bar. That saved my life, like no doubt. Like it was this giant steel iron pole trap of death. And
Damn,
yeah, I don't know. I can't explain it, but I know that it happened.
that's crazy.
Yeah, it was weird.
um, I keep thinking I don't really know. Like I can't think of something that I can remember something happening and be like, oh, that's super unexplained. I don't know how that happened. I know when I was a kid, I got a concussion. I didn't know it was a concussion at the time. We were playing football in the backyard with like a couple of my friends, and I remember someone like throwing the football like really high up, and I was like looking up to catch it, and they came and like they caught me underneath like my chin. And so as a kid, I didn't really know what happened. I remember blacking out, and I remember waking up crying. And then like my brother and my friend, like they was like, oh, like we'll just go in the house, like it's fine, like we're done playing. He got, like we got in the house, and I remember like trying to like lay down, which now in hindsight I know from like schooling that that's a terrible idea.
The worst idea.
It's like you don't want to try to go to sleep when you have a concussion. And like I remember like I couldn't see, like it was like everything was kind of blurry. And I remember going to ask my mom, like, can I heat up some popcorn? And she's like, yeah, go for it. And then I couldn't find the popcorn bag. Or no, I found the popcorn bag. I couldn't see the numbers to punch in how long to put it on for. And like I couldn't read like the package to see what it said. And I remember going asking her, like, can you help me with that? She's like, no, never mind, you don't need popcorn. You know, so at the time, I don't know, it was really scary. It was unexplainable to me as a child, as a kid, like I was probably like, I don't know, 8 or 9. But I don't like now as an adult, I know I'm pretty sure I had a concussion, but like I don't remember at the time. It was really scary, and it was something that was completely unexplained and something completely foreign to me. So I didn't understand what was going on with that. But I can't think of like an experience before or after that where I was like, I have no plausible explanation for this. So I'm sorry, my dear anonymous listener who sent that in. I don't have a good answer for you. I'm sorry.
What about a moment where you trusted your gut and it ended up being right? Like in a life or death situation, not like maybe I don't get Taco Bell today and then there's like an E. coli breakout, but like a legitimate like I'm gonna go left. I don't think I need to turn right now.
Actually, I was just today on the drive home, I was just listening to another podcast, and he was talking about like a moment where it's like you're at a stop sign and you wait. And I had that same moment about, I don't know, maybe about a year ago. And I was sitting at a light and the light turned green and I just waited a second. I was like, no, like I'm gonna wait, like make sure there's nothing coming. And I was in the middle lane and a car on the right, like pulled in the turn right. And this car blew through the red light and hit the car that was turning. Thankfully they were turning, so it was like a glancing blow and it didn't take it. But if I would have gone through the light, I would have been T-boned and it would have hit me on the driver's side. Like I would like it would have hit me. Like I would have been like seriously hurt. And like I guess in that instance, I have no explanation for why I didn't go forward. So I guess that was kind of like a trust your gut. Like this is interesting. Like don't do that. And then yeah, like I ended up pulling over and calling 911. Like doing all that stuff. But I guess that was kind of a blind gut. Well, like I shouldn't go through this intersection right now.
Yeah, I think that qualifies. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. So that was Banter with the Beardsleys. And if you have something you want to send in, we will give you all that information soon. It's also attached to this episode. So just scroll down a little bit past all the info and
Yeah.
you'll see all of our contact information there as well.
All right.
All right. So I believe now it is your turn, sir.
So for tonight's episode, I want to give you guys a treat and have a back-to-back poltergeist pageant. Today, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be covering the inspiration for the movie The Conjuring 2, and that is the Enfield Poltergeist. Um, like I mentioned, this is the inspiration for a movie. So I want to preface this by saying that this is the story that's been told by the family and the investigators involved. And so it's going to differ from the movie a little bit because the movie took a lot of liberties. And as always, I want to throw you my organic, free range, pink Himalayan sea salt, so you can take the story with a giant grain of salt. Because, like I said, there's a lot of people know the story from the movie The Conjuring 2. This is the story that everyone else has, so it differs from the actual movie. And then also some of the stuff is pretty amazing. So we'll get into it. So the Enfield Poltergeist takes place over the course of a couple years from 1977 to 1979, and it happened to a single mother named Peggy Hodgson and her four children: Margaret, age 12, Janet, age 11, Johnny, 10, and Billy, age 7. The activity seemed to center around Janet, however, and I hope you guys can hear the British pronunciation of center there because this activity took place at 284 Green Street in Brisdown, Enfield, which is in London. This home is a council house, which is essentially the British version of like affordable housing, like public housing. And Peggy moved in shortly after separating from her husband, who was abusive. So good for Peggy. Way to get out of the situation. I'm sorry you moved into a house that seems to have a lot of activity.
Yeah.
um, so things were going well when they first moved in until the night of August 30th, 1977. On this night, Peggy heard her youngest daughter, Janet, complaining that her and her brother's beds were wobbling around. Like any good parent, Peggy told her kids to shut up and go to bed because beds don't just move on their own. The next night, however, Peggy heard the kids once again making some noise and being loud, and then she heard a loud noise coming from their room. So Peggy stomped up there, assuming, she's muttering and she'd be like, there better be someone bleeding on the floor. I'm going to get the belt. But when she got in the room, she was actually kind of freaked out because Janet and the other boys were cowering in the corner, telling her that the chest of drawers had moved away from the wall on its own. And she did see that there was a chest of drawers just sitting in the middle of the room. Peggy began to tell them, like, okay, you guys are crazy. You're just moving this. And then she saw the chest move as well. It appeared to move towards the bedroom door, and Peggy got the sense that something was trying to prevent the family from leaving the room. Peggy attempted to push the chest back against the wall, but she was unable to, and she claimed that it was being held in place by an unseen force. At this point, Peggy's like, yo, fuck this shit. We're out. And her and the family ran next door to a neighbor's house where they asked the neighbors to call the police. While they were waiting for the police, one of the neighbors, Vic Nottingham, went to the house to investigate. Vic, as described in almost every single account that I found on all the different pages that I've looked through, and like everyone talks about Vic Nottingham being a large, burly builder type. And when he walked in, he immediately heard noises coming from inside the house. Side note, I don't know Vic being a burly or being a builder type. I don't know if that means he's a bodybuilder or a construction worker, but I think the fact that it says he's burly, I think he's like a construction. I think he's like a big, like a thick dude.
Yeah. I think in a legend or a version I've heard, he was like a maintenance man. So just like this
Probably, yeah.
massive big
So just
builder
a
guy.
big dude, yeah. Um, regardless, he states, I went in there, and this is a quote. He says, quote, I went in there and I couldn't make out what these noises. They were knocking on the wall, in the bedroom, in the ceiling. I was beginning to get a bit frightened. And the oldest child, Margaret, she also kind of collaborates the story, and she says that she'd, quote, never seen a big man look so scared. And as a large human being myself, I want to add that if you see me leaving a place looking scared, just run away. Nothing good can happen from that.
Catch up, just catch up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because everyone knows the rule. You don't have to be faster than what's chasing you. You just have to be faster than the slowest person in the group. So
And I will trip you.
I will knock you down. Okay, so a police constable finally arrives and they begin to investigate. This is WPC Carolyn Heaps, and she says she saw a large armchair move about 4 feet across the store or across the floor unassisted. I don't know why I said store. Jeez. For those wondering, WPC literally means woman police constable. And fun fact, it is categorized as the lowest rank in the police department, which sounds super sexist and rude.
Yeah.
It's also it's no longer officially in use. But anyway, our woman police constable sees this chair move and she promptly declares, "Well, no one is committing a crime. This isn't a police matter." Like that's literally she's like, "Oh, no crimes committed. I'm leaving. Bye." And she
It's
leaves.
essentially sucks for you.
Exactly. Yeah. Like not
Deuces.
my problem. That sounds like a problem for tomorrow morning. So the family claims this is kind of the beginning. This is where it starts. Over the next 18 months, the family would see a bevy of activity. They contacted the press. They contact like the Daily Mail and like all the big like UK newspapers, and they actually sent a reporter out and they sent a photographer out, and the photographer described the house as chaos. He said things would start flying around and people were constantly screaming. There's some photos that this photographer took, and they're kind of disturbing. Some of them, like you can see like the terror in their face. One of them says that Janet is apparently being thrown across the room, or that she's levitating, and a lot of the kids like they either look really terrified or they look like they're in a lot of pain. So some of the photos they're pretty disturbing to look at. The BBC, that's the British broadcasting company for you perverts out there that watch too much porn. They showed up and they took their cameras, they started recording everything. But after they went and they looked at their film, they found out that all the film they recorded had gotten deleted. The tapes were blank, and some of the equipment that had footage on it, the equipment got twisted and mangled in a way that they weren't able to salvage the film. So the family did what most, I think, normal people do. And when you contact the press, you contact the police, and no one can help you, is you go to psychics. They contacted the SPR, which is the Society of Psychical Research, and they sent out two investigators, a Maurice Gross and a Guy Lyon Playfair. Gross would later tell researchers that, quote, "As soon as I arrived, I knew the case was real because the family was in a bad state." And he later added that when I first got there, nothing would happen for a while. Then Lego pieces would start to fly around the room and marbles would be scorching hot to the touch. Then one day I was standing in the kitchen and a t-shirt leapt off the table and flew to the other side of the room while I was standing by it. I think scorching hot marbles is kind of strange. I mean, I've like left marbles outside when I was a kid and they came back and they're really hot, but being in the house is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So this is when things start to get a little bit worse. They start to get a little bit more in depth and a little more scary. The investigators said that they would see sofas begin to levitate, furniture would spin around and be flung across the room, and the family would be ejected out of their beds while they were sleeping at night. One day, Gross was investigating when a neighbor stopped by, and they soon heard screaming, and one of the children was screaming, saying, "I can't move, it's holding my leg." They try to pry the kid away, but they're not able to move him. I do want to step in and say that in this account, everything that's documented on this, they always say it was this kid, this happened. This one incident where the neighbor and the investigator were both there present, they don't name who the kid was. They just say one of the children. I don't know if they're trying to protect the child's identity, but everything else is named. So it just seems weird to me. And I just want to put that caveat out there that
Yeah, that's a little odd.
yeah, like it's a creepy thing. I can only imagine hearing a child scream like it's got me, and then saying you're trying to pull this thing, trying to pull a kid away, and you can't pull them away from like an unseen force. But why not document who the kid was? But I'm not gonna try to mess up anyone's credibility. I'm just saying it seems strange. Soon after this, the family begins sleeping in the same room. They want to be safe. They want to be together, which I think most normal people are going to do. Like, I'm just going to hang out in the room. We're all together. If something happens, it's going to happen to us together. But it didn't seem to help poor Janet. She is the younger of the two daughters, and she began to go into violent trances and claimed that at one point a curtain would wrap itself around its neck and try to choke her, which to me just sounds like a kinky poltergeist. Like, hey, if you're into that, you're into it. We're not going to kink shame you here on Bearded Things. She was even witnessed levitating across the room by the family, and she began to speak in a raspy, kind of terrifying male voice. Through this voice, she would speak through Janet on hours and identified itself as a man named Bill Wilkins. So Bill would talk through Janet for hours at a time. He claimed to have died in the house, and then investigators in the family looked into it and found out that there was a man named Bill Wilkins who had in fact lived in the house, and he did die of a brain hemorrhage while sitting in the living room. Gross would continue to interview Janet while speaking on behalf of Bill, but Janet eventually stated that she felt that it was not evil and that Bill just wanted to be part of the family. In 1978, they hired a priest and had the priest come out and bless the house, and she claimed the activity seemed to settle down after that. They said it never fully stopped, but the voices and the moving of furniture and the poltergeist activity never came back. I don't know if it's coincidentally or not, but soon after that, Janet moves out of the house at age 16 and she gets married. She would go on to state that she felt there was something in the house and that it was going to stick around. Now, many other paranormal investigators have come in to investigate the house, including famed investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, who anyone that's a supernatural spooky fan kind of knows who Ed and Lorraine Warren are. And they kind of just came in and made a stop. They didn't say, like they came in and said, yes, the house is haunted. The movie portrays them being a really active role in the investigation. But again, that's just kind of using the whole Conjuring universe where the Warrens are pretty prevalent in those movies. They kind of use that for more fluff. But they didn't spend much time or effort in as they were portrayed in the movie. They kind of just said, yeah, house is fucked. It's haunted. We're out. And skeptics began to emerge as well, claiming that the girls involved in the haunting had been recording in other rooms. So like they had video of these girls in other rooms where they're bending spoons and they're using like sleight of hand tricks, like in their room, like practicing, and they're using a broom to bang around the walls. They knew they had placed audio recordings next to them. So the girl, oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, just a quick question. So what kind of what sleight of hand?
They didn't say. It just said bending spoons and sleight of hand. So I don't know if they're trying, like, I don't know if they're doing card tricks. I don't know if they're like making things disappear behind their hands. Like, I don't know what the sleight of hand tricks were. Everything I looked at, that's all it said in all my research, because I don't understand where a sleight of hand is going to make a sofa levitate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, going to make a girl levitate. That's not sleight of hand. That's
Or
something
slide a chair in front of a cop like across the room.
Exactly. Like, that's seems completely different. Like, I think, and that's what, like the next part in this I'm getting to, like, basically the girls were like, yeah, we did some shit on purpose because we're trying to like fake it. Like, we want him to see that what we're faking and see if they're legit. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it just said bending spoons, sleight of hand, and they were banging brooms against walls where the audio recorders were. Like, they were recorded through some of the stationary cameras that were set up around the house. Like, they saw them in the corner. So yeah, so the girls claim that they did these things on purpose so that the investigators would find them and prove them wrong. Janet would later give an interview and she would say that only about 2% of the activities were faked. And they were trying to keep the investigators honest. I don't know how you quantify 2% of activity in the house, but that's what she said. Another point of contention was that Janet was only ever interviewed by Gross alone and without other witnesses. There's audio recordings of these interviews, and to be quite honest with you, some of them are pretty terrifying to listen to. But skeptics claim that they could have collaborated, they could have faked the video, that they're just, they're doing it on their own. But to me, this kind of seems hard, as some of these tapes are hours of conversation. And I think it'd be kind of difficult for an 11-year-old to talk in like a raspy, like deep voice as a man for hours on end. And even more investigators have claimed that the two initial people sent by the Society of Psychical Research, that they think they collaborated with the family because they put out books and they use that to kind of profit off of that. But ultimately, there's more investigators who believe it's legit compared to those who think it's fake. There's a lot of photographic evidence. Like I said, some of them are pretty disturbing, and the audio you can listen to as well. And there's some pretty big names in paranormal research, like I said, like the Warrens, who say they believe it was real activity. These two guys that worked for the SPR, they believed it was real activity. So it's kind of hard to see what side of the coin this thing falls on. So it's strange. Now, what about the house? After the activity slowed down, the family unfortunately suffered the loss of the oldest son. He died of cancer at age 14. And then Peggy died of breast cancer in 2003. So after that, the family kind of all moved out. She was the last person in the home because it's affordable housing. A new family moved in, and it was a single mother named Claire Bennett, and she had 4 sons. She claimed that she never saw anything, but always felt as if someone was watching the family at all times. Then her sons would tell her that they kept hearing people talking downstairs, only to go down to the stairs and not find anyone. Claire did some research and she found the history of the house and immediately got suspicious. She got scared. And then one night, Claire's son, Shaka, said he woke up and saw a man come into his room. He ran to his mom's room. He told her, "Ma, we need to move." And they did. They moved out the next day. They made it 2 months in the house. The house is currently, yeah. The house is currently occupied by a family who wishes to remain anonymous. And the only quote they have, which came out close to when the Conjuring 2 movie came out, they have one quote from this family where the mother said, all she says is, quote, "I've got small children. They don't need to know about it, and I don't want to scare them." That's all she said. I don't know if she's sensing things, she's just trying to ignore it and like push it all aside. But we don't really know, so we're gonna just kind of maybe keep our eyes and ears peeled to the UK and see if anything's coming from the house there on 284 Green Street. And that, my bearded friends, is the story of the Enfield Poltergeist.
Absolutely terrifying. Thank you so much for sharing that.
It's like, I remember when I did my stuff for last week for the other Poltergeist story, this kept coming up every time because I said I wanted to do a Poltergeist. Every time I did Poltergeist stories, this one kept coming up. So I was like, I'm just gonna push it aside. I'm gonna do it. Because the photos are like, some of them it's interesting. Like I said, we'll post it on the Instagram, and like some of it looks like she's jumping off the bed, but they're claiming she's levitating. But then there's some of them that it's like it's a little harder to explain like what's going on, and you can kind of see like the anguish in her face and like the terror in the other kid's face. So it's kind of crazy, and yeah, it's a crazy story. And like I said, it's the inspiration for the Conjuring 2. They turned it into the movie. Obviously, took liberties and did all that, but it's terrifying. I can only imagine, having a child myself, like just having them experience these things has just got to be terrifying.
Yeah, and I think it's really funny just judging by that. I'm probably going to edit this part out, but maybe it'll be great. I don't know. I think it's funny that the kid's name was Shaka in the second family. So I'm just making a guess that they're probably not the traditional white family that was in there before.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so the white family stuck it out. The family of colors like deuces.
Yeah. I'm out. Yeah. Not
Bye.
messing with that. And yeah, it's a crazy story. Like, in as short of a time as I could to put the script together, I try to do as much as I could to like get the whole story out there. Cause there's a couple like sites that are from like I forget, whatever the tabloid that's out there in like London, where it's like, the poltergeist is still there. And it's like all crazy. Like there's just stupid shit that they're trying to just sell like, papers on. But everything else, like everything's legit. They have so many interviews from this family, and like Janet to this day, like she's, I don't know, this is what, 70s. She's got to be like in her 40s, maybe early 50s at this point. Like she to this day still says it's legit. She got reburied. Her husband now is like, I don't care. Like she told me about all the stuff. I don't really care. Like we watched the movies. They weren't fans of the movies because of all the licenses that were taken. Um, like they just kind of like they just ran with it, and they kind of created their own shit. So they weren't fans of it, but they still claim that it was all real and it really happened. And like it's just crazy. And it's like I said, there's photographic evidence. The audio tapes, I don't know if we can link it to our YouTube. We'll try, we'll see. But the audio is kind of terrifying, where you just hear like the guy asking questions and like trying to get this person to respond, and then it just talks in this like guttural, deep, like raspy voice. And it's I listened to it, and I was like, ooh, like it gave me chills.
Yeah, actually, I just watched that the other night, like the full tape of the interview. And it's not
Yeah.
okay. It's very much not okay.
It's crazy. Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to see it on the YouTube, I'll definitely get that linked over. I'll find a
Nice.
way. It'll be there. So good luck sleeping after you watch that.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
If somebody wanted to send in and submit a story or a question for Banter with the Beardsleys, where could they do that?
They can do that on any of our social media outlets. Our Instagram is at BeardedThingsPod. Facebook is facebook.com/BeardedThings. The aforementioned YouTube is at BeardedThingsPod. And Twitter is at BeardedThings. We also have a website, which is BeardedThings.com, and an email, contact us at BeardedThings.com. Like we said, we would love to hear from you. Good, bad, anywhere in between.
Yeah.
Send us let us know if you have a Banter with the Beardsleys topic. If you have something crazy that's happened to you, please share it with us. And if you would like us to share it on the podcast, please let us know. Otherwise, we can just have a conversation. Just talk to us about it. We're open to that. If you just want to talk and feel like you're not losing your mind, we will here to hopefully validate that you're not losing your mind, or at least not more than we are.
Yeah, we're all in this together.
Yeah. 2020, got to stay strong. We're almost done.
Yeah, we're inching. It's like that car that wants to die. And it's just like one more mile. You got it in you. So that is our show this week, everybody. We hope you had a good time, and we look forward to hearing from you. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.